may have heard of Mendelian genetics in school in biology, where we have these fun little Punnett squares, and we've got dominant alleles and recessive alleles, and based on the combination you inherit from your parents, you either have a disease or you don't. And Mendelian genetics follows a very specific inheritance pattern that we see on the right. We've basically solved Mendelian genetics. We don't need AI for Mendelian genetics. By solved, I mean we're pretty good at identifying which genes cause which disease and being able to predict whether a child is going to have a disease like sickle cell anemia, or for instance. So we don't really need AI for that. However, most diseases we're very interested in today are polygenic diseases. And polygenic means genetic disorders that are caused by the combined action of more than one gene. That's where this poly comes in. Polygenic diseases include things like obesity, heart disease, maybe even some types of cancers. Those are polygenic diseases. And that's where AI can really play an important role. So here's a result of a AI model run on a bunch of different diseases and genes. We've got these triangles are genes, and these circles are diseases. I guess they're all neuro-related diseases or conditions. And we can see which genes affect which diseases and how everything is kind of interconnected. I want to talk about a kind of crisis the field of genomics is facing right now. So in this plot, it's called a PCA plot. It's a type of unsupervised machine learning model. And each dot is a person. And in PCA, basically what it does is it takes certain features, in this case, the genomes of each person, and it figures out how similar 2 points are, and it puts them either together on the plot or far apart on the plot, depending if they are very similar or very different. So we did that, and then we also colored these dots. This is kind of a hard question, but what do you guys think the colors represent? They represent something very specific. Do they represent different diseases? What diseases they are affected by? Yeah, not exactly. I'm sure we could do some sort of PCA plot for that as well. But these colors represent people's self-reported ancestries. We use the word ancestry in genetics to mean something sort of similar to the word race. But in genetics, we like to be super, super specific. In fact, I would say these categories aren't actually specific enough. We'd rather talk about East African ancestry, Southeast Asian ancestry, things like that. So, all right, maybe this is obvious, maybe it's not. Often, people with similar ancestries have similar genomes. This results in some similar characteristics between people of similar ancestries, and is the reason why some ancestries have kind of ancestry-specific diseases, such as East Asians being more susceptible to lactose intolerance, and people of West African descent being more susceptible to sickle cell anemia. All right, next case study here. I want you to take a look at this chart. This is some demographics of some samples from this huge genomic study called the UK Biobank. UK Biobank sampled almost 1 million genomes from people around the UK. And take a look at the highlighted box and tell me what's wrong with this picture, especially considering the graph we just saw. Cool, our data is super biased, right? We have almost entirely samples from people of European descent and not very much of other ancestries. So UK Biobank hasn't made any huge medical advances yet, though ultimately its goal is to build some polygenic disease models predicting which mutations or variants or genes are involved in certain diseases. And if we only have data from people of European descent, we may end up getting models that really only work for a certain ancestry. So UK Biobank hasn't made any huge medical advances yet, but it could in the future. And so this is pretty dangerous. However, we also have some data bias issues that have already been causing problems. So for example, Ancestry.com is a company where you can send in your genome and they'll tell you where your ancestors come from. So these are the regions of the world that you can, the results that you can get from Ancestry.com. If you are of East African descent, West African descent, or European descent, you can see that you're going to get some really detailed results from Ancestry.com. However, if you are from East Asia, or if you have East Asian descent or Native American descent, you're not going to get interesting results at all. All you will be told if you have Native American ancestry is that you have Native American ancestry. You don't even get to know if it's from North America, South America, Central America, similar with Eastern Asia, despite the fact that these two regions of the world are obviously very diverse. And this comes from the fact that Ancestry.com's data set that they built these models on is very biased, has a lot of European ancestry and East African ancestry, and is a little sparse in terms of other regions of the world. All right, this might not be too concerning to you, but still, right? It's a little unfair. Everyone pays $100 for this Ancestry.com test, and some people get really cool results. Some people get not very interesting results. Kind of unfair. Oops. All right. A more concerning result of this data bias is a drug called Warfarin. Warfarin is a blood thinner, and Warfarin is very famous because it's the first ever drug that is dosed based on a machine learning model. So people with different genetics metabolize Warfarin a little differently. So based on your genome, you should either get more or less Warfarin. However, this is the demographics of the data set that this Warfarin dosing machine learning model was trained on. We see, again, almost the entire data set, 80% was trained on people of European descent. And the result of this is we've gotten really, really good at dosing Warfarin for people of European ancestries, and we really have not improved the dosing information for people of other descents. So a pretty concerning result of data bias. And as machine learning and genomics become more and more abundant, we're probably going to see more and more drugs that have the same types of problems. We definitely need to create more diverse data sets. There's a lot of research showing that if you fund diverse researchers with connections in Eastern Africa, Southeast Asia, regions in the world that have been historically underrepresented in these data sets, you will end up with more diverse data sets. One other additional challenge is that actually, due to the way humans migrated, starting in Eastern Africa, people of Eastern African descent have some of the most diverse genomes in the world, represented by this this group of people. That's the X's. This group of people in this graph. They have some of the most diverse genomes in the world. From a statistical standpoint, this actually means that in order to build accurate machine learning models for this group of people, we need to collect more data from them, not less. More diverse genomes is sort of the statistical equivalent, more noisy data sets, we need more data. So an additional challenge is, like, not only do we need to collect the same amount of data from people of Eastern African descent, we actually need to collect more. This sometimes disincentivizes researchers from trying to build good models because they need to spend more money, collect more genomes. However, I argue that whole genome sequencing, DNA sequencing has become very, very cheap and is only getting less expensive. And so hopefully this will not be a problem in the future. I want to end this with a little bit of hope. I think the field of genomics is really realizing this diversity crisis is a huge problem. And there's a lot of recent huge projects and a lot of funding going into trying to build more diverse genomic data sets and to try to make sure that any medical advances we make through this field of genomics are distributed equally and fairly across the globe.